Welcome back to another episode of Bonsai with Romano. I'm Romano and today I have a very special guest. I'm honored to have Liam Ofrati, the author of the incredible book Growing South African Trees as Bonsai. Liam has a wealth of knowledge and experience in the world of bonsai, particularly in South African species. In today's interview, I'll dive into Liam's journey, the inspiration behind the book, and explore the unique South African bonsai identity. We will also discuss some exciting species that should be grown more as bonsai in South Africa, and the thought process behind the book design. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy the insightful conversation with Liam. It's great to have you in studio. You've been following my channel for quite a while now, and I must say this is a very big moment for me. Interacted with you quite a lot.
Yes.
I've seen some of the comments, I've replied back, and when I saw you write this book, I just thought I had to have this guy in studio to talk to me today, because I really liked reading your book. So welcome to the studio, and glad to have you here.
Thank you very much for those kind words, Romano. It's just a privilege for me to be here, and it's actually great to finally meet you.
No.
As a child, I was always fascinated with trees, and I was always fascinated with bonsai as well. And a very good school friend of mine, his mother actually was growing bonsai, and that must have been in the late 80s, early 90s. And she was living in Kensington, Johannesburg. And what I've come to assume later is that she belonged to Doug Hall's club in Kensington, Johannesburg. And when visiting him as a schoolboy, I was able to see her trees. And that's where my fascination for bonsai developed. And in about 1991, my mother asked me what I wanted for my birthday, and I asked her I wanted a little bonsai. And she was probably able at the local nursery able to source a little sarissa for me. But also at that stage, possibly for my birthday too, my friend's mother gave me Doug Hall's book. And that really set the platform up for me to start my bonsai journey. By the time I'd finished school, I was very actively growing bonsai, and having a thirst for more knowledge. I mean, we had basically worn the pages out of Doug Hall's book by that stage. We got hold of more books, but the books that we were getting were international books. They were overseas books, so they were dealing with a lot of exotic species. So at that sort of stage, I mean, I couldn't wait to get a larch, or couldn't wait to get a yew. But I mean, you can just imagine they're almost impossible to get over here. So, also at that stage, sort of like after school, a friend that I was growing bonsais with, we studied horticulture and landscape design. And the use of indigenous plants was really pressed on us. It was very strongly encouraged. And working in that industry and having access to indigenous plants is where the fascination for indigenous trees came. And actually, bonsai for us became all about indigenous trees. And that we were actually living on like the second story of a building in a flat. We couldn't actually grow bonsai at home, so we were growing bonsai in a secret little corner at our workplace. And in that little corner where we successfully grew bonsai for a good couple of years, that collection was stolen. When that friend immigrated, he gave me the few trees that he had left that weren't stolen, and this was about 20 years later. And upon receiving those trees, I had the heart to start again. And when starting again, I almost immediately joined the Pretoria Bonsai Kai. And when joining the Pretoria Bonsai Kai, I was furthermore exposed to specialists of indigenous trees and exposed to people who exclusively grew indigenous trees. And I think that's where it started. I think that is the beginnings of my journey with indigenous bonsai.
Okay, no, that's quite interesting. And then why did you decide to write this book?
Okay, I thought that having a 20-year gap in bonsai, you look back and you think like, yes, what would have my trees looked like now? I mean, I would have had my bonsais would have been 30 years old. So having a look back then, I thought I could play catch up if I could create optimum sort of conditions. like trying to understand each species exactly. I could create optimum conditions for these trees. And I started just to consolidate all of that information. And being a part of the club and actually having direct access to very experienced people and very specialists of species, the type of information that I was writing, I could verify with them. You know, I could say, could I email you this? And could you just tell me if I'm on the right track? And their response was like, they were very enthusiastic about what I was writing. And they said, you know, you should make this information accessible for everybody. And it was their encouragement and their response to what I was writing that gave me the idea that, yes, maybe I should make it accessible for everybody. And I think that writing the book was another way for me to engage in bonsai. Like, I think that I'm incredibly enthusiastic about the hobby. And I think that writing a book was just another way to engage with bonsai while we're waiting for them to slowly grow.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, no, that's very interesting. And I mean, you spoke about you writing the stuff down now. So it brings me to another question. So when I read the book, I noticed small things that you did, like the little logos that shows it's it's deciduous trees or it's evergreens.
Yes.
And can you just tell me a bit more about that type of design of the book?
Okay. Another reason why it made sense to write a book is that I actually had access to people that I needed to write the book, like editors I had direct access to, graphic designer, and photographers. So the graphic designer that I had access to is somebody who I've tattooed extensively. So the graphic designer that did the book has almost followed me through my entire tattoo career. And he boasts a lot of work that I consider of good from me. And so I was actually used to having a creative process with him, you know. So I was used to being on the other end of the table with him. We're creating artwork for him. And I was used to having a creative brainstorm process with him. And so now he gave me a lot of freedom with his tattoos. So I gave him a lot of freedom with the book, which he grabbed hands on. So we basically came up with the idea of those icons, and I think that the rest is all credit to him. And I'm glad that I gave him free rein with the book, because I think that I just would have restricted his creative process, really. Like, let's take the illustrations of the leaves from my mother-in-law. She actually used a custom handmade or homemade pigment to create those leaves. It was very much based on serpentine. So he would use the colors from that paint of the leaves to be the color of the text. And then the one day he just said, listen, just get your mother-in-law to scan and mail us a blank piece of watercolor paper. And we were like, okay, yeah, sure. And when she did that, he actually used it to make the whole book look like it's been done on watercolor paper. He also did a lot of other things. The whole book's worked out in spreads. So the whole book's worked out on 2 pages. And you'll see if you buy the book and you page through it, there is a rhythm between black pages and white pages. And there's a whole strategy worked out about where those black and white pages are kept. And even some of the text labels for the trees are sometimes you'll see that are in the shape of the tree itself. So the text layout. So there's all these very sort of clever, creative things that this graphic designer did. And I think without that, the book just would have been a textbook. So, and I guess that a lot of very academic people would be quite inspired by just a textbook. But the type of people that use bonsai as hobby, you do bonsai as a hobby, would appreciate, just as you've pointed out, and a book that is quite like an artwork. And I believe that that's what the main goal of the book was, to inspire people further. And I think that the graphic designer achieved that.
Okay. No, that's good. Now, taking all of that into consideration, all the input from the person that did all the designs, How long did it take you to compile this book, getting all the information and everything together?
I think the total amount of time was 3 years.
Sure. That's quite long. That's really long.
Yeah.
I didn't expect it to be that long, because I know you contacted me, I think about a year ago, about a photo or two.
Yes. Yeah, collecting the photos was actually almost the last step.
The photos in the book is amazing. Who helped you take that photos? Because I mean, if you look at it, so normally when you have photos, they contrasting and they don't look the same. And all the photos in the book, they kind of look the same.
Yes.
Same texture, same color, the shadows, everything's just amazing. How did you do that?
Okay, so a lot of people submitted photos they have or that they took themselves, but I commissioned several photographers, and then I just used that template. Like I just asked the photographers, can you take photographs that look like this? And other submissions where some other people hired a photographer to take photographs of their trees, I would just say, just show your photographer this, and just say, if you can achieve that, that will be great. So that's how we went about that.
Okay. Then the other interesting thing that I saw is like most of the species are South African species, or all of them are South African species, not most of them.
Yeah.
And I saw when I looked through the book, the styles were all South African styles. So can you tell me a bit more about South African identity as bonsai?
Yes.
The trees, how was that decided on? Yeah, how did that happen?
Yes, okay. I remember that you were asking me, was it deliberate that I chose trees in a South African style? And I can tell you that it wasn't. Okay, but perhaps it was completely coincidental that the tree submissions that I got were trees in South African styles. And I feel that what it proves is that South Africa already has a established bonsai, South African identity. So the type of growers that are growing South African species or rare South African species are already at the point where they're styling trees in South African styles. So that wasn't deliberate.
What is South African artistic expression in bonsai?
Yes, okay. First of all, I feel that the South African bonsai identity is something that's already established. It's not something that we're trying to understand or develop now. And I think that by this stage, the South African bonsai identity has almost become tradition. So we're beyond the point of trying to define it or understand it. And I feel that it continues to be an active topic because people are enthusiastic to speak about it. And I think that people are enthusiastic that South Africa has its own bonsai identity or its own bonsai style. And I think the reason for that is that there is a large diversity of people in South Africa, and we see that in the South African bonsai community as well. There's a large diversity of people doing bonsai in South Africa. And I think that our common ground, which is, excuse the pun, is our surroundings, is the nature around us. And people who grow bonsai are nature lovers. So I think that all South Africans are proud of Table Mountain or of the great baobabs of the Limpopo province. And I feel that people want, South African bonsai growers want to express that with their bonsais. They would like to celebrate our heritage with their bonsais. And I also think that South Africans want to celebrate the already established bonsai identity that we have. If you're somebody like me that is engaged in hobbies or interests that are more prolific overseas, you will understand the seemingly obvious statement to make, or the profound sort of statement to make, that us as South Africans here have the greatest opportunity to grow the most amazing South African trees in South African styles. And we can do that better than anybody else in the world. And I think that South Africans, whether it's subconscious or not, acknowledge that. And I think that that's where we're at in the South African bonsai identity.
Okay. Now, talking about the South African identity in bonsai, are there any species that you want to elaborate about that we need to grow more as bonsai? Because I mean, when we started out, I mean, here we have a nice Japanese black pine,
Yeah.
It's exotic tree, but I like the tree.
It's a beautiful tree.
And we all want to do exotic trees. But is
Yes.
there something that you think that we can use more as bonsai in South Africa?
There are several. I think that there are many.
Yeah.
And even when I did landscape design, there was always an indigenous replacement for an exotic tree that was being used. There was always something that you can use in place of. But I think that the two species that I really think there should be a spotlight on is, first of all, the Diosporus. There's an ongoing joke about how to pronounce that. Diosporus, Austra Africana. Okay, so the star apple or the Jakkalsbos.
Okay.
I really feel that that is a hidden gem. You know, it's got incredibly small foliage and very, very tight ramification. It can be grown in a range of conditions. It flowers, typical of its genus, like hanging bell sort of flowers in a magenta sort of pink. They're easy to train. They can be grown in a versatile, many styles and sizes. And they're incredibly unique. And when the book lists Bert Davey as the Shohin and Mame champion, you can definitely see that the star apple could challenge that. You know, I don't know if you've perhaps had the opportunity to see amazing art or listen to amazing sort of musical performances. And when art and musical performances start to become like magic to you, the first time I saw this species as a bonsai, it honestly looked like magic. It almost looked unreal to me. It's almost got this glistering red color with its incredibly small foliage. I can't think of anything else that's going to make smaller foliage than that. Another one is the Naxia congesta, the gewone willevlier, or the common wild alder. The incredibly small serrated leaf. The trunks are proven to thicken. They've got amazing texture on this very unique pale, almost yellow bark. And the examples we are seeing now are home or hand propagated or grown from nursery stock. And I look forward to seeing when growers are starting to find wild specimens or collected specimens, or specimens that have been grown in the ground for a long time of these species, and to see these sort of spectacular, amazing results that are going to come in the future from these species. And I think that those two in particular are something worth speaking about.
Okay. Yeah. Speaking about that, the two species, and just the passion you just spoke about that, how has the love of indigenous bonsai helped you connect with other passionate bonsais?
Yes. Okay. I feel that I'm like a textbook extrovert, really. I think that a lot of the bonsai hobby for me is engaging with other people. Like, I think that I enjoy bonsai because there's other like-minded people doing it. And I think that people sense that about me. And I enjoy connecting with people, and especially people who are like-minded about indigenous bonsai. And I'm always willing to correspond with other growers, and it's mainly growers in my own club. And I hope that answers your question.
No, it does. Thank you. Then the other question is just under the section of how to and when to do what. I see that there you said specifically, you didn't mention dates like January
Yes.
to February.
Yeah.
You mentioned late autumn, late summer. Is there a reason for that?
Yes. Okay, so I don't think that a month determines what should be done on the tree. I feel that the tree is going to tell you what needs to be done to it. Now, if anybody is similar to me that actually documents their trees and applies dates to them, you will see that from year to year there can be a variation in what month things are happening. Yeah. Like, let's say when bud swell is happening or when flowering happening. So I'd like to use the example of my boerbean at this point. You know, my boerbean for the last 4 years has had bud swell at the end of July. And this year, its bud swell was the first week of December. And if I had to use months as a reference point to the work to be done on it, I mean, I think that I could have put the tree at a great disadvantage this year when it only had bud swell in December. The other reason is that even species like cuttings from the same plant that are in different areas of my garden, like let's say from full shade to full sun, you will see activities in your own garden with plants from the same cutting happening at different times. Also, readers are from different parts of South Africa. I mean, there are amazing baobabs bonsais being grown in the Western Cape. And this is a winter rainfall area. And I really feel that it's safe to assume that what the baobab bonsais are doing in the Western Cape are very different to what they're doing in Limpopo at specific times of the year. So, you were asking me if there was possibly a motive for not mentioning months because of maybe targeting overseas readers. I can tell you that besides maybe the overseas contributors to the book that wanted a copy, or perhaps other eccentric bonsai book collectors that might be overseas, I didn't imagine making any overseas sales at all. And the book, I think, was exclusively aimed at South Africans.
Okay. Well, that's quite interesting, because it's a very, very comprehensive book and very easy to read. Like I've got maybe 50 bonsai books, and when I read this, I just couldn't stop reading. I told you, when I received the copy, I just read through the entire book in one day.
Oh wow! Thank you.
So yeah, it's amazingly written. So how was it received in the general public in South Africa?
Yes. Okay. I feel that it's been received very well. The first, what was really like the first target for me was, I was really hoping that there would be a copy of a book in every province of South Africa, and that has been achieved, and I'm proud about that. And I feel that I've met the target amount of copies to be distributed now, and the sales are continuing. The people that have come back to me after buying the book, I've only received positive reviews. And some people actually made some very valid suggestions. And those suggestions, I don't think it's the idea of a second edition is by any means on the table at the moment. But great suggestions for a second edition. And those sort of suggestions and queries that I have been getting, I've been just addressing in my YouTube channel.
Okay.
And so far, I feel that the book has been received well. A lot of people describe the book as being long overdue. And I could see that there was a thirst for a desire for knowledge of indigenous trees. And I think that the book just came out at the right time.
Yeah, now just adding on to that, what you mentioned, like it's long overdue.
Yes.
Like I think everybody makes notes and nobody is sharing it. And I think that this was that sharing of that information to everybody.
Yes.
So if somebody wants to order this book, how would they go about that?
Yes, they can just simply order it from my email address, laserliam@gmail.com. If you just send me an email, I can arrange to post you the book.
Okay, no. Is there any thoughts or messages you'd like to share with the viewers just regarding the book and anything?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Romana. Thank you very much for having me here. And it's a privilege for me to finally meet you. And I was very enthusiastic about the idea of being able to do this interview with you. I also want to thank all of those who have bought a book so far. And I'd like to thank everybody who has corresponded back with me to give me their feedback and also to give me their compliments. It really was humbling to receive those sort of positive comments back. I think that what I would like to mention is that there's been great eras in our history. Like, can you imagine what it must have been like to be an artist or specifically a painter, like in the Impressionist era? I mean, you would have been embarking in an era in time as an artist that a whole lot of art movements are going to be coming in the future. That it must have been a great time to be a painter, or what it must have been like to be an architect in the postmodernist era, or actually being just observing the type of architecture that would have been erected around you in the postmodernist era. And I somehow think that that similar sort of amazing era to be a part of, we are in South African bonsai now. And I think that we're going to look back at this very time and say, this was a great era for South African bonsai. There are great growers. There are amazing collections. There are good bonsai businesses. There's a good industry. There are very active clubs doing amazing things. And I feel that it is a big and growing and active hobby in the country at the moment. And I feel that at the moment we are capitalizing on what our predecessors have done in bonsai before us. And I would just like to encourage South Africans to carry on what we're doing, because I think in this era, I think that we're doing amazing things with bonsai. And I think that engaging with South African bonsai is certainly something that makes me feel proud to be South African.
Thank you so much, Liam, for taking the time to join us today and to share the incredible insights into South African bonsai. Your passion and dedication to document and promoting indigenous bonsai species are truly inspiring. I encourage all viewers to follow Liam's journey and stay up to date with his work at Living Sculptures ZA. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and make sure the notifications are on so that you are up to date with all the latest interviews and bonsai tips. Until next time, happy bonsai!